Hi everyone, my name's Will and I like to craft things for people in Elder Scrolls Online. I do this for people in the guilds I'm in, but also for people who aren't. So for players who are on my friends list, and also for players I've never spoken to before, people who write in the zone chat that they're looking for a crafter, and I'll send them a message and see if I can help. As part of this process, I often encounter people who want a crafter, but they have absolutely no idea about the process. So they have no idea about the materials required or the costs involved. And I think it's definitely worth having an understanding because, first of all, it's a smoother and faster process for everyone. And secondly, it reduces the chance that you make a mistake that costs you a lot of gold. And it also reduces the chance that somebody takes advantage of your lack of knowledge and swindles you out of a chunk of gold or a lot of money. So it's definitely in your interest to know how it works. And that is why I'm here today to talk about this fantastic tool, which should really help solve a lot of those difficulties, the ESO Crafting Calculator. There's a link in the description. I'm pretty sure this is the top result if you put ESO Crafting Calculator into Google. Basically, you fill out what you want here and it generates this really nice, clean list of all the materials you need to fill that request. Okay, so I've already filled this out to save you watching me click through all these drop-down menus. What we're looking at is two 5-piece sets. We've got a 5-piece Law of Julianos heavy armor set and a 5-piece Order's Wrath set. So 3 jewelry pieces and a 2-handed Inferno staff, 2-handed weapons. So obviously those 4 things will give us the 5-piece bonus. And there's also a few glyphs at the bottom as well. This is not any particular build. I've just filled it out in this way because it gives me the talking points that I think you should know for this video. So I'm going to start on the right here and talk about the set. Obviously from this drop down menu you can choose which set you want. Now this is pretty superficial basically. In terms of materials it has no impact on the things you need to procure. One thing I will say though is make sure that if you want a set crafted that the set you want is that it actually can be crafted. It's quite common that people come to me and they say, can you make this for me? And it turns out I can't because it can only be obtained by doing a dungeon or a trial. On the other hand, sometimes people come to me and they say, can you craft something for me? And I don't need to because it's an overland set, because it can be found in treasure chests, in delves and dolmens and world bosses in a particular map. And in this case, it's simply a question of opening Tamriel Trade Centre, finding the item at the best possible price, and then simply travelling to the guild trader in question. Sometimes I will help people out though, because they may not have the DLC where that guild trader is located. So it's just a case of travelling over there, picking it up, and they'll reimburse me for the cost. On the far left here, we have quantity, type, item. I'm not going to say a great deal about these really because it's pretty self-explanatory. Only one point is that there is this blue background if there's more than one thing in the quantity field. If we come to level, now this is what determines the material used and the quantity of that material used. Now if somebody wants, for example, a level 20 training set, so 5 pieces of body armor, all with the training trait, just to help them level up a little bit quicker, in all likelihood I'm going to ignore the cost of the materials. I'm not going to ask to be reimbursed or for the materials to be replaced. I'm an experienced crafter with lots and lots of those materials in my craft bag, and by overlooking that, I do that for 2 reasons. The first one is because it makes reimbursement of any materials a little bit less complicated. And the other reason is because 99 times out of 100, the person that I'm doing the request for, they'll give me a donation of gold, which will more than cover the cost of those low-level materials. So it's absolutely no problem. And I think it's really good for the community that donations happen. It's a really great way of thanking a crafter for giving up their time and stopping their game just to help you with yours so you can come forward. It's not a must. I never set a fee, but when it comes to payment, if somebody asks me, what do I owe you? I will just say, you decide, that's up to you. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be gold. Sometimes it happens that it's something completely different. Last week, or a couple of weeks ago, somebody said to me, look, I don't have a lot of gold, but I'm maxed out provisioner. I can make something for you. So what's your favourite food? I'll make that for you. And they made a stack of my favourite food for my favourite character, which was absolutely perfect. That was a real win for me. Somebody else said, I've got a load of writs I can give you. I don't do them. I'm not a crafter, but they're probably useful to you. And they were, that was really helpful. It was a stack of RIP vouchers for a really good price. So those low level, for those reasons, the low level materials I don't care about. Okay, now we'll take a look at style. Now I'd say 99% of the people that I craft things for, they don't actually care. Any style will do. But you do have the option with this tool to pick a particular style if that is something you wish to do. And I filled these out this way because once again, I want to say these materials, for example, the style material for the base game motifs, once again, that is something I will overlook in terms of reimbursement of cost or material, because I deconstruct so many items. I've got a craft bag full of them. They're widely available from crafting merchants. So once again, to make it a little bit less complicated, I'll overlook the really small materials. However, there are some style materials that will spike the cost. An obvious example of this is not actually on this list, but that's the ancient Daedric style. And at the time of making this video on the European server, I think it's like 9 or 10,000 gold per piece. So that is clearly something to bear in mind if you want something in that style. And I'd recommend that whichever style you want, if you do want a particular style, use Tamriel Trade Centre to familiarise yourself with the prices, and if necessary, use it to go and find the one at the best possible price. All right, now we'll take a look at the traits. Now for armour and weapons, with the exception of Neon-honed and weapons down here, all of these traits, the trait material, the cost is absolutely irrelevant. I do not intend to be reimbursed because as an experienced crafter, after having refined so many raw materials, I have thousands of each one in my craft bag. And for example, the 5 sapphire for the divine trait, I will completely overlook entirely just to make it less complicated. I don't need it. Of course, the Neon Crux for the Neon-honed trait is an exception. I think for armor, the fortified Neon Crux is 5,000 a piece or so. And for potent, for weapons, I think the average price is about 30,000. So that's clearly going to have an impact on the cost of what you want crafted. And that's another really important point. Don't confuse the two. It's fortified for armor and potent for weapons. There should be a little picture appearing so you can see the difference, but do bear that in mind because that's an easy mistake to make and an easy way to lose gold. Of course, if you see that same confusion in a guild trader, you never know, you might pick up a bargain, but it's definitely worth keeping that in mind. Now we come to the improvement section, and here we've got normal is white, fine is green, superior is blue, epic is purple, and legendary is gold. I think a lot of people tend to think in terms of colours rather than these terms, so I think I'll try to use that for this video. Once again, for white, green and blue, I will overlook the cost of the material, perhaps with the exception of jewellery. We'll get to that in a moment. It's only really when we come to purple and gold crafted items that I will tend to look at the cost. That is particularly true for the jewellery materials, jewellery improvement materials. Here, for example, we've got six zircon plating to go from blue to purple. Now those materials alone will cost over 500,000 gold straight away, and going from purple to gold with the 12 chromium plating, that alone, those materials is over 2 million. So something to bear in mind, jewellery is expensive. Again, use TTC to find the materials at the best possible price if you're providing the materials yourself. And while we're on the topic of jewellery, let's take a quick look at the jewellery traits. Some of them, arcane, healthy and robust. I will overlook the cost of the trait material for the reasons already mentioned, but there are some which do have a slightly higher price. Protective and Harmony are obvious examples. Bloodthirsty is a bit more expensive, coming in at about 3,000 at the moment. And some of these here, Triune, Swift and Infused, I mean the cost of those, the Amber, the Gilding Wax and the Dawn Prism, that will run into tens of thousands. So I think Gilding Wax is sort of 18 at the moment. And Gilding Wax is about 5 or 6, Auric Amber about 18, and Dawn Prism I think we're in the 40 or 50,000. So that's something that's clearly going to bump up the cost if it's jewellery you're after. Okay, we'll take a look at a couple of the glyphs I've got down here. So this one here, for example, again, for the reasons already mentioned, white, green, blue, and most likely purple as well, I'm going to overlook. This glyph here, for example, that would be a truly superb glyph of Magicka in purple. The cost of that alone, average price, that can be done for under 100 gold. So depending on the amount, I'd probably be tempted to ignore the cost. It's only really when we get to the legendary glyph Kuta that the price of that is about 4,500 on average, perhaps a little bit less on the European server. So that is going to have an impact on the cost if you want a handful of armor glyphs. But once again, those lower level glyphs, I honestly don't care about being reimbursed in my experience as a crafter. Of course, there are some glyphs which are expensive. Hakejo is an obvious example. Those prismatic glyphs that use that, I think the average price at the moment is about 45 or 50,000 a piece. So definitely something to think about. Again, use Tamriel Trade Center to find the item at the best possible price if you're reimbursing the material. All right, so once you've filled out all these drop downs with everything you want, you'll then have a nice list at the bottom with what you need. You can click Make Image, and you'll have an image that you can then copy and paste, perhaps send to the crafter in Discord if you're talking to them there. Or you also have the option to generate a raw text list that you can then copy and paste in a message into Notepad for your own reference as you please. There's a couple of things I wanted to say about the improvement materials here. If somebody is sending me gold in order to cover the cost of the materials because they don't have them, I'll typically charge slightly less than the standard average price they might find in a guild. Now that's because when you sell something in a guild, the seller only gets 92% of the sale price. 1% is the fee for listing the item, and the other 7% is the cut that the guild itself takes. I think it's a little bit unfair to charge somebody full price that covers those guild fees and taxes when there's no guild involved. And if you're paying a crafter for the use of his materials, then that's something you should think about too, because that might help you get a slightly cheaper price. The other thing I wanted to say is that this list here assumes you have maxed out the passive crafting skills for improving items using as few improvement materials as possible. For example, with clothing, woodworking and blacksmithing, it should take a maximum of 8 gold improvement materials to bring something from epic to legendary, from purple to gold. But if you don't, I think it's something like 12 or 14. So if you don't have those skills maxed out, it's going to waste a lot of materials needlessly. And if somebody says to you, look, I can improve it for you, but I need more than 8, then they're having you on. They're either not a true crafter or they're basically stealing your materials, and you should keep an eye out for that. So that's 8 at most for clothing, blacksmithing and woodworking, and 4 at most for jewelry material, for the chromium plating, and 3 and 2 and 1 for the other jewelry materials. In fact, that's a really good point. The whole Elder Scrolls economy of improving items and then selling them and creating potions and food and then reselling it, the whole system is based on the fact that you have those passive crafting skills for improvement materials and portions of potion or food generated, that you have those crafting skills maxed out. Because if you don't, you will not be able to compete with the people who have, and you're guaranteed to lose money if you're reselling those items. You'll only be able to create 1 or 2 or 3 portions, whereas they're creating and selling 4 each. That pretty much covers everything I think you need to know about this tool. Just a couple of closing recommendations. There's a ton of good information out there already as for good build ideas with crafted apparel and weapons. I think it's always best that you come to a crafter with a clear idea of what you want, the trait, the level, the item, the improvement grade and the style you want, and that just keeps the whole process quick and simple for everyone involved. Use Tamriel Trade Center to familiarise yourself with prices and get the best possible price if you're covering the materials directly, and get those skill points into the relevant passive crafting skills if you want to improve the item yourself so you don't needlessly waste improvement materials. And finally, have fun. Now I do hope you enjoyed this video, that you found it useful, that you learned something from it. If you think I missed anything off, then please let me know in the comments. But even if not, please let me know what you thought anyway. I'm interested in everyone's feedback because this was my first ever video. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so I can see you in the next one. Thanks a lot.